Hello and welcome to the weekly talk show of the EU-ASEAN Next Gen Think Tank Dialogue. My name is Madeline, and over the next 30 minutes, we will be taking a closer look at connectivity in the context of digital trade. Catherine Setiawan has joined me today to share more about digital trade and how it can help bridge the digital divide. She will also be telling us more about her work on the digital single window. Hello, Catherine. Thank you for taking the time to be here and share more about your work. You're currently part of a connectivity research project that is concerned with digital trade. Could you share more about this?
Thank you, Madeline. So my team and my team, Pinkan, Trong, and Dara, we're actually now working on our research project together on the ASEAN single window and the EU single window. And we would like to compare and approach it from the perspective of challenges and strengths and providing recommendations for improvement for both ASEAN and EU countries.
And given your current activity in this EU-ASEAN Next Generation Think Tank Dialogue, I'm just wondering what got you interested in the two regions and also in working on digital issues?
ASEAN has actually been close to my heart, not because I'm an Indonesian, but also because I used to work at the ASEAN Secretariat. I think for ASEAN, that's actually when my love started. I believe together the EU and ASEAN represent almost 25% of global economic power. And starting December last year, EU and ASEAN agreed to elevate their relations to a strategic partnership with a commitment to enhance economic and security cooperation. So I believe with the future of the both regions partnership. And answering your second question, my interest toward digital is actually started at work. So at that time, my mentor, my ex-boss, asked me to accompany this digital consultant and to be able for me to learn more about digital. At that time, I was very reluctant just because I didn't know anything about digital, and as a person with a legal background, I thought like regulations on digital is very unclear at that time, like 3 or 4 years ago, I think. And now I think I seriously love and passionate about the digital economy, and I think it's actually something that is very interesting. So here I am talking to you about digital.
Thank you for sharing that with us. It helps us get to know more about you, but we also want to understand what digital trade is and how you see its role in basically connecting people and regions.
So I think digital trade is not just about buying and selling goods and services online, like e-commerce, for example. It is actually also the transmissions of information and data across borders. It relies on the use of digital technologies to facilitate trade and improve productivity. For example, through simplified custom procedures. So like it's where actually my research, my team and our research on the ASEAN single window is actually come in. We're actually looking through that perspective of digital trade. I hope that answers your question, Madeline.
Sure. And if we're talking about the digital divide, then can you help us understand maybe how you believe that it can be addressed? Perhaps you can use Indonesia as an example since you're Indonesian.
I do think that actually there are many elements and many factors, that we need to consider in eliminating and combating the digital divide, especially in a country like Indonesia, where like we're actually big countries with a lot of difference from one place to another. But I believe there are three most important things that we could take into account. The first one will be infrastructure, like not only digital infra but also physical infra, because in some part of Indonesia we still need to build a basic infra like the road and the tower of the BTS and stuff. The second one would be to increase the digital literacy, because we still lack of digital skills. And the last one will be policies slash regulations, because I think it is important not to overregulate, but to ensure that the regulation that we have is updated and also, um, really consisting of some important part that is innovative and really adjusted to the new digital situations that is happening today.
I see. Thank you for your insight. I'm also thinking here that whether you live in an urban or in a rural area now, with the boom of e-commerce, as you mentioned, pretty much everyone is trying to get some access online. And do you see the digital infrastructure projects develop in Indonesia in the medium and long term?
I do see, I mean, I'm a believer, so I believe that actually it will goes better in the medium or long run. But like Indonesia, we do have some plan, like we have a medium and longer development plans in involving digital infrastructure. Like for example, in the medium term, I believe the government is focusing towards expanding the 4G coverage, increasing access of the 4G networks in the disadvantaged frontier and also outermost areas in Indonesia. And in the long run, I hope that we could actually really consider of launching the 5G network, including fiberization, and also to consider of building a very committed national data center for government's cloud computing platform, for example. But maybe it can also be happening in the medium term. So we'll see how it goes.
All right. I understand that you're living in an urban area, right? So basically your access to most of the digital services is more or less available. Has COVID-19 impacted how you access the platforms, how you use the internet, and also how you connect to it?
I mean, I think I'm very lucky because I live again in an urban area where I don't really experience a slow internet connections and slow access, or I do have like a lot of providers that I can pick. So if one provider is very bad in my area, I can just switch easily to another provider. So I think I don't have that kind of issues. But then of course it's not always happened the same in with other people in Indonesia, in other parts of Indonesia. So I think some kind of connections that is actually equally good for everyone to be accessed wherever they are in every part of Indonesia, I think will be very important, especially in COVID times like this.
Um, I'm also wondering what you see as the next pivotal development in bridging the digital divide. I mean, we've talked a lot about ASEAN, but what about the EU, and how do you see developments there as well?
I think maybe for the EU perspective, Madeline, you can also, I should learn from you and everyone, because I'm still learning as well about the EU situations and updated informations about the whole conditions of the, like digitalizations and stuff. But I do think that actually it happens equally everywhere, whether it's in ASEAN or in EU. I believe in COVID time like this, people are, they need to isolate themselves and stay at home. So digital connectivity is actually very important because people everywhere, they work from home, study at home, shopping from home, socializing even via internet, with Zoom and everything. So basically all activities can be done from home with the availability of internet connections and also tools like handphone or laptop. And that is why I think wherever we are, be it in ASEAN or in EU, I think bridging the digital divide is very crucial if we want prosperity for all. Because the digital divide is the gulf that exists between those who have ready access to the internet and those who do not, right? So I think bridging the digital divide will actually improve the quality of life, economic opportunity, as well as enhancing the social interaction for those without access as well.
Thank you for sharing that. Um, if we're thinking about what we need to know, basically, because we are not experts on digital trade and also on digital divide and digital platforms, for the wider audience, what would you like to say that is the essence of digital trade, and when it comes to it bridging the digital divide, how would you see this?
I think, I mean, like I'm learning every day about the whole topic, and thanks to you after the discussion that we had this evening, I think digital trade in the sense of like, for example, e-commerce, it can actually does provide incentive, a good incentive for the government to set up infrastructure or also provide digital training. And I think as those are like two important elements for bridging the digital divide, I think e-commerce can also contribute by providing incentives. In Indonesia, for example, we have Tokopedia as one of the biggest e-commerce in ASEAN, I believe. They have like a Tokopedia Academy where actually it is actually a platform where people can access and can learn to improve their digital skill sets. So I think those kind of incentive from e-commerce actually be done by other e-commerce in order to actually assisting in bridging the digital divide. But we can also look at it in an infrastructure perspective or in the perspective of policy and regulations in terms of where e-commerce or any other digital platforms and players can provide suggestions for the governments to improve and enhance and keep updating the government with innovative regulations that is needed and important in order to be able to like execute the business and the digitalizations successfully.
I hear you talking a lot about governments, and I'm wondering what you believe is their responsibility, and is it solely their responsibility to achieve such a development? Because I'm not sure if there are any other actors involved here.
I do believe that the government is actually one of the main players, but of course, the government is not alone in actually handling the issues of digitalization. There are many stakeholders that could be involved in these present situations, like definitely the e-commerce players, digital players, and also the people who actually get all the advantage and benefits. Those people, everyone need to actually work together to be able to have a very good digital ecosystem. I don't think it's actually the main responsibility of the government, but I do think that the government is actually play a big role in a big chunk in succeeding the whole digital agenda.
I think this also brings us back to your work on the government's involvement in the digital single window and how you can do this regionally and between regions. I'm just wondering if you're able to share a bit more about your actual work in the project and perhaps what the questions are that you're looking at to address.
I mean, like my specific work on, do you actually like, can I actually ask you for like, is it like related to the work that I'm doing with my team right now, or it's just like a broader work on digitalization?
I think both are valid questions, Catherine. You can start with whichever you find more relevant.
I think for the specific work that I'm doing with my team in CAS project right now, I think it will be good if I invite my other teammates, like Pinkan, Trong, Dara, to also speak, because we are still discussing and agreeing on the outline of the whole work. But basically, the point itself will be on the approach of looking through the ASEAN single window and the EU single window. And we are looking through the perspective of the success and failure and how those regional platform can learn from each other and what will be the best recommendation so that the platform can actually be improved and be succeeding in the implementation.
Can I also ask a bit more about your work outside of the project? Is that something that you can share with us?
Oh, sure. I mean, in general, the work on the digitalizations that I'm doing currently is actually Um, but again, it's also ad hoc, right? It depends on the request of the government. But at the moment, we are working closely with some governmental agencies looking through the framework of digital economy as well as digital transformation in general. But then, it's a teamwork, definitely, and we have a lot to think about. But aside of that, we also actually work on some regulations on digital, like, analyzing a lot of regulation that is related to some elements of digital economy, like, for example, e-commerce, consumer protection, and data protection and stuff. So on that angle and perspective, I would say those are some of the works that I am doing currently. But again, it's a teamwork, and I do have like some people also working on this. So um, I think definitely it's a bigger issues if you want to talk about that. It's just like some brief explanation.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm at the same time as you were talking, I was wondering about how much private partnerships have developed over the digital era and over the digital space, and also particularly during COVID-19. Have you seen an increase? Have you seen many actors coming from outside of Indonesia, or do local ones develop at this point to pick up?
I think it's a very good question, Madeline. I really don't have the exact numbers, but I see that it's actually increasing. And also I know that the current law on omnibus, I don't know whether you like, the government of Indonesia, we currently starting last year, we have these regulations on omnibus law. Actually, one of the clausel was about infrastructure sharing. So, well, it's not necessarily for the private and public, but I think it's also a good news because at the end of the day, the infrastructure seems to be like more open for partnership and cooperation, be it between the central and the local government, or private to public. But then again, I don't have the exact numbers, but I see that it's actually increasing and more open in that sense.
And would these be externals, or would these be internal actors?
Um, I
I
think,
know you don't have the numbers on this.
yeah, I do think that it actually can be for both actors. Oh, you mean like for foreigners or local, right?
That's right.
I think so actually I was looking at through this EASEPA agreement. It's actually an agreement between Indonesia and Australia. I think it's pretty much consistent with what the regulations on telecom we have. So I do think that it could be both private and also, like international and also national actors.
Thank you for that. I was wondering if you have encountered anything that went against your expectations to happen this year in not just digital trade, but maybe a specific area in which you're currently working on that involves digital trade. So it could be infrastructure, since you mentioned that that's what you're currently focusing on. Is there something that threw us a curveball this year?
Actually, like beyond digital, I do have some other works like future of works. It's not necessarily digital economy per se, but it's also a work that I'm doing with KS, thanks to KS. But it's actually more into looking through the potentials of Indonesia automation and how it relates to the future of work from the labor perspective, as well as from the improvement that we could actually do to combat the challenges that might arise with the futurization, with the future of work, and how Indonesia can actually still adjust with the whole condition of automation in the work field.
Can you share with us a bit more about that as well? Because I assume that the digital aspect is actually quite important in this as well.
I guess in Indonesia, personally, again, we do have some challenges, right, to prepare for the future of work, but it's not always bad. because the future of work in Indonesia, well, I can actually share with you some challenges that we have. I think digital knowledge is actually pretty much need to have some basic knowledge like analytical skills and critical thinking. And from the research, it was saying that Indonesia is actually lack of the number of people with a good analytical and critical thinking skills. So I think before going further to the digital skill sets needed, the curriculum need to also be improved. That's actually one of the challenges that could possibly, be taken into account and need to be seriously considered. But aside of that, I think Indonesia is very positive, and despite the jobs that is diminishing because of the automation, there will be like a lot of new jobs coming. So I think we also need to actually enhance ourselves and the future generations with the skill sets needed to embrace the new jobs that is actually coming because of the future of work.
I think this feeds back brilliantly into what you were sharing earlier about the need to kind of upskill yourself, and not just when it comes to digital knowledge, but also the skills and the infrastructure available to use it. So at the same time, I'm not sure exactly what your personal experience was with digitalization and with sharing knowledge when you traveled, because you mentioned that you traveled extensively. How do you see this in relation to Indonesia if you were to compare?
You mean like the impact of digitalizations to the travel?
Yes, and in everyday life, basically, because we're still talking about connecting people within and between regions. How did you see this connection in your own experience, in your own travels, and in your own work?
I guess it's actually, well, it could be like positive and negative, The positive side, of course, I save a lot of time to be able to still, for example, working without needing to travel to other countries for working. I can just like meet my counterparts or anyone, like my colleagues all over. Like for example, like with you, right? You're based in Singapore, and I don't have to go all the way to Singapore. It's time consuming, also costly, right? Because I need to buy the ticket and stuff. I think with digitalizations, I can actually meet you, working with you so easily with Zoom, with WhatsApp. So it's actually saving a lot of times. But on the other hand, it's not always easy to talk with the laptop. Well, I see your face, you're very beautiful, and it's really good to always, have a conversation with you, even though we're using Zoom or WhatsApp.
Likewise.
Yeah, right. But then I think still it's very important to meet you in person, physical, so that actually we can be more I don't know, like how to say, there is such a word in psychology, like we can be more intimate and start to have like those gesture. I don't know, but maybe we can do it online. But I do think that meeting in person is still actually pretty much different than talking with you with WhatsApp or Zoom. I will feel like more like knowing you better after I meet you, perhaps. And of course, I cannot wait to meet you as well and the team, right, Madeline? As we keep talking about this
Right.
conversation.
So if I understand right, there's an aspect of connectivity that gets lost no matter how good the infrastructure is, no matter how many services you have available, and no matter how much you can connect technically, there's still something that can't exactly fully be bridged, if I'm getting you right.
Sure, but theoretically, of course, digitalization is very useful, especially in the time like this. We don't have to go all the way to Singapore to meet you and to discuss something with you. We can just like use internet connections with laptop and stuff. But then I don't know about the other aspect that we possibly need to consider, but I guess it feels different. And maybe sometimes, even though we can still have a conversation or working from home with computer and stuff, but then I think there will be need like time when sometimes we need to maintain our courtesy, to be able to make sure that we know the person correctly and understand the whole point of conversation without the usage of internet. But of course, theoretically and everything, like my experience wise, I think I think we've been doing great and it's been running so successfully as well. So yeah, nothing to be complained, I think.
Thank you for that. We don't have much time left, so I'd like to ask you a final question. Are there any other thoughts that maybe you'd like to share with us today, or something that we didn't quite think about?
I guess related to this topic again, I think, digital transformation or digital divide, I think is definitely one issue we need to taking into account very seriously, because not just because it's COVID-19 or, but again, it's blessing in disguise, because I think COVID-19 does accelerate the digitalization. But aside of everything, I do think that actually it's very useful to really think about all the people in the areas without internet access, and need to think on how to really like bridging the connection so that those people can have the same enjoyment and get the benefit that we got by using the internet and with the whole digitalization. So I guess digital development in combating digital divide need to be taken into account seriously, be it from the digital trade or from the other perspective or aspects. I guess yeah, I think it needs to be really taken into consideration seriously.
Catherine, thank you so much for providing such an informed and multifaceted insight on how digital trade and the digital world can actually bridge this digital divide that we're experiencing. I'd also like to thank our viewers for joining us today and invite you to tune in at the same time next week when Ms. Phong An Vu from the Diplomatic Academy of Vietnam will be addressing a security topic with her fellow guest. So thank you so much and have a lovely weekend.
Thank you so much, Madeline, Christian, and everyone. Good to talk to you this evening.